Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our WXN Virtual Book Club. My name is Sherry Stevens, and I am the owner and CEO of WXN. We are so happy today and very proud to have this amazing young woman be part of our book club today, Samra Zafar. She is an amazing young woman, a beautiful spirit. I remember when the first time that I met her, and I was just so impressed with her courage and how strong she is to be doing what she's doing. So thank you, Samra, for elevating your voice and for removing the veil from this very important issue. We appreciate everything that you're doing for women across the world.
Thank you, Sherry. It's truly an honor to be part of the WXN community. And I remember the first time I met you, I was just, oh my God, this is just, you know, this is my people. And you're just so inspiring and so amazing. And your championship of women is just awe-inspiring. And it makes me want to be a better ally, better supporter too. So thank you for inspiring all of us in the WXN.
No, the pleasure is all ours. Thank you, Samra. When we have women like you walking by our side, this job is really quite enjoyable and almost easy. So thank you. I just also, Samra, I want to give a little bit of her background. She is an award-winning, internationally renowned speaker, a best-selling author, and an educator for human rights, mental health, and gender equality. She serves as a governor for the University of Toronto. She's a celebrated ambassador for Plan International and a board member for the Women's College Hospital Foundation. She's busy, very busy. I see you on Instagram and Twitter all the time, so I know how busy you are, and on LinkedIn. She has also participated in 3 TED Talks and major nonprofit corporations and universities across North America and globally. I know you had a Women's International Day or week or month. You had quite the schedule until COVID hit.
I was
almost back to back.
Traveling, yeah. I love it though. My soul food.
Yeah, I know. It gives you energy. Her work has been featured extensively in global media, and it has earned her many major awards. And one of them, which we're very proud of, is the WXN Canada's Most Powerful Women Top 100. Samra won this award last year in the RBC Champions category. So we're really proud to have you as part of our community.
Thank you.
And also, you had a busy year. You also were named the Top 25 Canadian Immigrant Award, so you had that award as well. Things are really going well for you. I'm so happy for you. And Samra's book, A Good Wife, is a national bestseller, and it's based on her personal story of escaping gender-based oppression to pursue her education. Again, very strong, and I'm very proud of you for taking that torch so other women can see that light and follow you. The book, Good Wife, was also named among CBC's Best Books of 2019 for Canadian nonfiction. Congratulations. And not only that, it's currently being adapted to a premium TV series.
Yes.
I don't know if you can talk about that today or not, or if it's still under wraps, but if you could give us some, like later, that would be great. Yeah. So I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm just sending you so much love as you continue this brave journey, and know that we're here, we have your back, and please continue to be a shining light for so many women across the world. We love you, and we applaud you, Samra. Shining on, my dear friend. Okay, I'm going to let you take the reins now, and I'm going to flip off and have a wonderful book reading.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lee, for that wonderful intro. And thank you, everybody, for joining in today. I'm truly, truly thrilled and honored to be here. And, you know, this is my favorite part of author life, because when I wrote the book, I definitely wanted people to read the book and read my story and be inspired and touched. But more than that, I wanted it to be a conversation starter. I wanted it to really bring those conversations out from under the rug, from behind closed doors, from the veils of honor that society often puts on these things, and you know, the people who suffer are the women who are trapped in these situations, and they're expected to just stay silent or are complicit or subservient. And I was in that situation for a very long time, for most of my life until my late 20s, and then after I left, it was a battle to unlearn all those things that held me back, and even, you know, things that I had ingrained in me, that what the role of a woman or what a good woman is. And the reason I named my book A Good Wife is because I heard this so often in my marriage. A good wife stays silent. A good wife is subservient. A good wife doesn't talk. A good wife doesn't speak up and tolerates. And I wanted to take this title and turn it up its head. So I'm going to start off with sharing a couple of passages from the book that are kind of that are quite powerful, and I think for me they're just a couple of inflection points or turning points in my journey, that really helped and helped me understand that there's more to life than just what I have today. And they were one was a wake-up call, and the other passage that I'm going to read later on was a validation point. And then I'd love to get into a conversation with all of you. In fact, that's my favorite part. So I'm going to leave as much time as possible for that Q&A portion. So please have your comments and your questions and your ideas and stuff ready. So we're going to start off with, this is the chapter 8 in the book, and it is so the only place I was allowed to go outside in when I was married was the Ontario Earlier Center in the neighborhood. And for those of you who don't know, who are not from Ontario, these are little centers in various communities across Ontario where where parents can take their young children, and the children can interact with other kids, and as a parent, you can interact with other parents, and they learn crafts, and they often have, you know, playtime and things like that. So that's the only place I was allowed to go when I was married. And I used to relish that time. It was 1 or 2 times a week, but I would just be so happy because it was my little taste of freedom. It was my little moment of, yes, I can actually do something on my own. I'm actually capable of going somewhere. And this particular scene is when one day I was coming back from the Ontario Earliers, and I was pushing my daughter's stroller back home, and she started asking for a donut. So it's a very powerful scene, and I'm gonna just quickly read it. It was another short delay in my return home from the drop-in center. A quick stop at Tim Hortons to get a donut with sprinkles for Aisha. I stood at the counter after ordering and dug into my coat pocket to retrieve the toonie that I was sure was there. But I couldn't find it. I stepped back from the counter, searching all of my other pockets and then turning my attention to the diaper bag. My embarrassment was ratcheting into panic. Even as I anxiously worked my way through the bag, I knew my search was fruitless. I never had any money on me. I had a bank account, which I had been required to open when we got the mortgage for the house, but it sat empty. The only deposit had been $1,000 that my father wired to me for my birthday, the spring that Aisha turned 1. I'd managed to buy myself only a few toiletries with that money before Ahmed transferred everything into his own account. And Ahmed gave me no spending money of my own. If we were out shopping and I needed to buy something for Aisha or for the house, he might hand me a few dollars. Why do you need money? He once said. It's not like you go anywhere without me. He had been right, of course, but every once in a while, I tried to squirrel away a few coins, like the one I thought was resting in my coat pocket. I had moved the stroller away from the counter and was getting ready to slink out of the store when I heard a voice. Excuse me, can I buy you a coffee? I looked up. A man in his early 30s was standing before me. He was pointing to the counter. No, thank you, I said, mortified. I don't want coffee. All the things Ahmed had told me about men were beating through my mind. Why was the man doing this? Was this some way to get me alone? To attack me? What did you order then? The man asked. I glanced quickly at his face. His eyes were kind and soft, and his tone was sympathetic, not coercive, not seductive. He felt sorry for me, I realized. I just want a donut, I said weakly, glancing down at the stroller. The man smiled at my daughter. Let me get that for her, he said. I protested, but he put the money down on the counter and handed me the bag with the donut. Have a nice afternoon, he said, as he headed out the door. I watched him get in his car and exit the parking lot. Then I pushed the stroller outside. Sitting on a dusty bench, feeding small pieces of donut to Aisha, tears overtook me. I wanted to be grateful for the man's generosity, but all I felt was stinging humiliation. What kind of life was I living that I didn't even have $2 on me? And what kind of person was I that people took such pity on me? The answer was obvious. I was poor, I was powerless, I was pathetic. By the time Aisha had finished eating, I came to another conclusion. My father had thought that money didn't matter. I always suspected he was a bit misguided, but now I was convinced that he was wrong. Money mattered, or at least not having it did. Just like in my parents' marriage, a lack of money was making my marriage worse. It was certainly fueling Ahmed's surliness, and perhaps most important, it was trapping me. This scene, it always breaks my heart because this is the scene, especially the line where I say I was poor, I was pathetic, and I was powerless. It was a scene, it was a time in my life when I really was, I really did feel powerless. I had no financial independence. I had no financial resources, and it often felt like living in a dark place with enough air that you can breathe and just barely survive, but not enough, not nearly enough to be able to breathe and actually thrive. So this was a time when I finally actually realized that I needed to do whatever I could in order to make some money and get financially self-sufficient and do something just to move my life forward. And that's when I started to order all my courses through distance learning and complete my education and my high school at home, and then eventually go to university. So it was a very powerful moment in my journey. And the second one that I want to read is, this is way later. So I had finished my high school, I had started university, and when I started university, I stumbled upon the Health and Counseling Center at U of T. I started going there for counseling and learning what was happening to me was abuse, and it was not okay, and I deserved better. I had choices, I had options as a human being, as a woman, as a Canadian, and eventually I left my marriage. The next 2 years after that were extremely tough because when I left, I had no money, I had no job. I was a second year student. I was in my second year of undergrad at U of T in Mississauga, so UTM. I had two young kids who were 9 and 4 at the time. I have no family in Canada, no friends, and just a little bit of hope and a ton of determination that maybe there is a way forward. Maybe there is some way that I can move my life forward, and I can, even if there's a little bit of hope, even if there's a tiny chance that my life could be better, I wanted to take that chance. Because by that time, I had gained enough resources or options through counseling. And on the other hand, also the abuse had escalated to a point where he was about to kill me a couple of times. So my mentor actually always says that, Samra, you stayed while leaving was scarier than staying. And then you left when staying became scarier than leaving. And that certainly happened after 12 years of marriage, when staying became so scary that I was afraid for my life, and leaving became less scary because I was able to gain knowledge through university, through counseling, and ultimately knowledge is power. So After I left, the next 2 years were very tough. I was working 3 or 4 jobs. I was going to school full time. I was raising my 2 kids, and I was just pushing forward in every way I can. And there were so many days when I felt like giving up. There were so many times I would hear my own family members saying that, you know, what makes you think you can actually make it? Like, you're crazy. You should go back, or you shouldn't have left. And the backlash and the shame and the stigma that I faced from so many people, as if I'd committed a sin or done something wrong by standing up for myself. It was very debilitating, but luckily I was part of the university community, and I had made friends who came to my aid during those tough times. I had my professors and my mentors who were there to hold my hand and tell me that I can make it and I can do it. And they believed in me, which taught me to believe in myself. And ultimately, I just kept taking it one day at a time, one step at a time. And 2 years later, when I graduated, I was named the top student at University of Toronto. And there was this one particular scholarship. I won several awards and scholarships during that year, but there was this one particular scholarship. It's called the John Moss Award, and it goes to one person annually from all 3 campuses combined. So one graduating student, and it's based on 3 criteria: academic excellence, and leadership, and community involvement. And I had a 4.0 GPA almost, and I had I had been volunteering on campus, and I've been a TA and doing a lot of research and running mentoring circles for first year transition students. So I had, you know, some of those criteria, and I had applied, and I was so scared of applying because I was like, there's no way I'm going to get it. I'm like 10 years older than all the other students. I was like 31, 32 at that time, 31. And I was like, you know, my department advisor encouraged me to apply, and I just thought I was making a fool out of myself, but I did apply, and they nominated me. And eventually I ended up being a finalist, and then eventually winning the scholarship in 2013. And the process, how it's done, is when students apply or they are nominated, and then they pick 5 finalists, and those finalists go on a panel interview, and the panel is comprised of very distinguished alumni. And so this scene is from that interview for that scholarship. And you'll see when I read this why it is one of my absolute favorite scenes, and I often read it at book readings. The interview took place at the main campus in downtown Toronto. I arrived a full hour early, finding a spot to park the minivan. It was the first week of February, and as soon as I turned off the engine, cold air began to seep into the car. I sat behind the steering wheel, shivering, trying to calm my nerves. I had a copy of my personal statement in my purse. I took it out and I read it. Then I read it again and again. As I was trying to beat back the needles of doubt, I was trying to remind myself of who I was now and who I wanted to be. Eventually, I got out of the car and walked towards the interview room. A few minutes later, I was taking a seat at a large square conference table in an elegant window-lined room. I looked at the 10 awards committee members facing me. Their expressions were friendly, and John Rothschild, the chairman of the committee, started the interview with some generous words about my academic record, which helped me breathe a bit easier. One of the first questions was what leadership meant to me. I had been a TA, and I'd run some classes and groups at the Afghan Women's Organization, but these were not the experiences I wanted to stress. Instead, I told them that I thought the most powerful type of leadership was leading by example. As a mother, I was striving to do that. I wanted my daughters to know that they had a right to every opportunity in the world. I'm trying to show them that through my actions, I said. One of the next questions made me pause. Who is the person who has taught you the most? Who has been the most influential? I was about to say my father, but I stopped myself. If I were being honest, I had to admit that wasn't true. I took a deep breath and I forced myself to answer. My husband, I said. I glanced around the table. Face after face registered shock and disbelief. In my personal statement, I had mentioned briefly that it had taken me years of struggle to get to university because I had been wed as a teen and was stuck in an abusive marriage. My answer had clearly struck everyone as bizarre. My husband taught me how not to treat people, I explained. He showed me what I didn't want to become. In a way, he taught me how to be strong because he forced me to be strong. Because of what he put me through, what I had to rise above, I learned what I was capable of. While I wouldn't wish my experience on anyone else, I might never have known the truth of my strength or discovered its dimensions if he hadn't driven me to it. The final question, however, was the one that unnerved me. With everything that you faced, what is it that keeps you going? They asked. The cool professional facade I'd been trying to maintain through the long round of questions started to crumble. I could feel my throat constrict. When I started to speak, my voice was wobbly. Every day I feel like I should give up, I admitted. But every day I make myself get up and keep going. I need to respect myself and my dreams, to live with dignity and freedom. But it's more than that. I keep going because of my daughters. I want things to be easier for them. I want them to be able to pursue their goals and their dreams. Everyone should have the right to do that. With that, I thank the judges for their time and for the opportunity that they had given me. So that is my absolute favorite scene from the book for a variety of reasons. I think it just touches upon so many things. You know, when we talk about adversity, and we often, we hear this a lot of times in TED Talks and speeches, that adversity builds character, and adversity it really builds your emotional muscle, and it absolutely does. But it's not like I feel it's not like a given that you just go through tough times and you come out as a more resilient person. It's about how you come out of it. And two people can go through identical situations and adversities, and one would come out bitter or one would come out better. So it's a conscious choice that we make on our end of how we are going to let adversity shape us as a human being and as a person, as a woman. And I made that choice when I left my marriage, and I had seen my mom being in an abusive marriage, and my father was abusive to her. And at that time, as a kid, I didn't really realize that much. But as I grew up, and certainly as I wrote the book, that really came to the forefront for me. And I was determined not to let that affect me the way I'd seen my mom become very bitter and jaded. And I was just so focused on that, yes, what happened to me is not my fault. And the trauma that I'm facing is there. And instead of running away from that trauma, instead of turning a blind eye to it, I leaned into it. And I knew that even though what happened to me was not my fault, but healing from it is my responsibility. And I definitely took responsibility of that. And I put myself into counseling. I put myself into therapy. I started seeing my therapist and my psychologist, and I see a psychologist even now. But what that did was, it really helped me develop that emotional muscle. And eventually I was able to develop a sense of gratitude for what I've been through. That doesn't mean what happened to me was okay. It will never be okay. And I will always say that, this saying that people say everything happens for a reason. I don't believe in it personally, because what is the reason for a girl to get married and be forced to lose her childhood and her adolescence? What is the reason for a lot of women to be killed in the name of so-called honor? What is the reason for people to be treated unfairly because of the color of their skin, or the gender they identify with, or the faith they practice, or who they choose to love? Like, there's no reason for these things, because when you look for a reason, you almost look for ways to justify those things. So there's no reason. But I always also say that just because something bad happened to you doesn't mean your entire life has to be bad. And I developed that, and I'm still on that journey of of being accepting of, yes, this happened to me, and this is how I choose to come out of it, and this is what I choose to do with it. And when I graduated, when I won this scholarship that I just read the scene from, and eventually graduated with honors and being named the top student in economics, etc., I had this choice of like, what do I want to do with this success? Do I want to take the awards and scholarships that I've received and my fancy new job? At that time, I got a job at RBC. Do I want to take all this and ride off into the sunset and just live happily ever after? And if I did that, there's nothing wrong with it. It would be completely justified. But there was this hunger, this passion, this fury almost inside of me that I need to do something more with this. I can't just sit there and let this happen to others. Like I almost felt this, I don't know how to call it, this calling inside of me that I always used to wonder, why did this happen to me? Why did I go through all of that abuse and then come out with more success than I ever could have imagined? What was the purpose of that? What was the reason for that? And I wanted to just do something to make a difference because I knew that my story was not just my story. This was the story of millions and millions of women and girls around the world who continue to suffer in silence because we don't speak up about these things. We brush them under the rug. We think, oh, it's not honorable to talk about it. And the biggest thing I've learned in my life is that there is no honor in silence, and change never starts through silence. In fact, silence only affects, it supports the oppressor and never the oppressed. So I wanted to do something, and I knew that it would start by breaking the silence. So I started sharing my story back in 2013. And it was like in little blogs, in small community events. In fact, those early days, I would often go to event organizers and I would ask them, can you please give me the mic for like 5 minutes? Maybe there's someone in the audience who needs to hear what I have to say. So it would all be on my own time, on my own cause. I would just do it from a place of passion. And sometimes my friends, even my kids, were like, why do you keep doing this? And I just like, it just brings me so much meaning. And I would get connected to some women, or someone would write to me and I would start mentoring. And I discovered how that played a role in empowering others. And especially the first time I had published my story in writing was for a blog that got published, actually went online on my convocation day. And I went and got my degree in the morning. It was already a very emotional day for me, a very emotional morning, because I've worked so hard for my degree for like all these years. And I came home, I logged into my social media, and it was flooded with thousands of messages from women all over the world who were touched, who were inspired, who were writing to me that, me too, this is happening to me as well, or I've been through this too, I'd love to talk to you. And remember when I said that I always wondered, why did all this happen to me and why did I come out with all this success? That is when I found the answer to my why. And I knew that I couldn't stop. And I just started on this journey and did whatever I could to get the word out there, the message out there, the story out there, is that it could help somebody. And it just snowballed over the years, and here we are today. So, and every day I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm still on this journey because there's so much work that needs to be done. There are 12 million girls every year that are forced into child marriage. 12 million around the world every year. There are 650 million women alive today that were child brides. I'm one of them. There are 1 in 3 women in North America that are affected by domestic partner violence, and much more who are affected by some form of sexual or physical harassment or violence. It's not acceptable this is not the world we want ourselves to live in. This isn't the world that I want my daughters to grow up in. And it will take a lot of consistent, deliberate effort on all our parts to push that dial and to change that narrative. Instead of tying a woman's honor to her body, the way she dresses, her marital status, her ability to bear children, her ability to stay subservient and silent, we need to let a woman define her own honor by who she is, her dreams, her goals, her individuality. People ask me sometimes, after I do these book clubs, I've heard this question a lot that, oh, well, if he had turned out to be a good husband, it would have been okay, right? And my answer to them is, so is that all there is to a girl? That if he had turned out to be a good husband, it would have been okay for me to lose my childhood, my adolescence, my right to grow up and become the woman that I wanted to be, my right to pursue my dreams, my right to fail and fall and get back up and try things and discover myself, my right to go to concerts with friends and choose who and when I wanted to get married to, or if and when I wanted to have children? No, no, we need to change that narrative. Like it breaks my heart. And a lot of people don't even know that child marriage actually is legal in Canada. When I tell that to people, there's like so much shock that I see on people's faces, because we think this only happens in third world countries and far away and it doesn't affect us, but it's happening right here under our noses. I've been working with a group of women to put together a documentary on child marriage in North America. And I was recently talking to a researcher at McGill who's done some research on this, and we found that in the last decade alone, there have been 4,000 marriage licenses issued in Canada of underage girls with older men. And some people think, oh, child marriage is like two high school sweethearts getting married. But no, the majority of these are underage girls with much older men. So under the age of 18, we're not allowing a girl to vote, to get a credit card, to get a car or any kind of property, to buy alcohol, to and sometimes they wouldn't even be able to get custody of their children because they're a minor themselves, or have access to a lawyer, etc. But we're allowing them to get into the most important legal contract of their life, which is marriage. I was 16 when I was forced into marriage. I was a child. I was 18 when I became a mother. Went from high school, from grade 11, to now being a wife and a mother, and being told that this is what a good wife is supposed to be. This is the box you're supposed to color in, and don't go outside of it. And we think this is a one in, just a rare case. It's not. It's happening here. Since I've written the book, in the last year alone, if I've just been to hundreds of such book clubs, virtually as well as in person. And I've heard stories over and over again from teachers of how there are girls in their classes who are being pushed into child marriage or forced marriage. And we think, force means like somebody's putting a gun to your head or a knife to your throat. That's not what force means. Force is the coercion from a very young age, the conditioning that this is what you're supposed to do as a girl. This is what your goal is. This is what your aim is. And then I mentor some child marriage survivors, and there's a woman in in Vancouver who I mentor, and very similar story to mine, except her marriage occurred in Canada. She was 16 when her father took her to a mosque, signed off on some papers, and got her married to a much older man, and it was all perfectly legal in Vancouver. And she said to me, Samra, it's not like somebody put a gun to my head or a knife to my throat, but if my father is going to say, if you don't marry this guy, you're not part of the family anymore, and we're going to shun you and abandon you, what am I going to do as a 16-year-old girl? I don't want to cause pain to my family. I don't want to cause shame to the honor of the family. So these are much deep-rooted issues that propagate in these types of behaviors. And as I've gone through and been doing this work for the past 7 years, I have heard similar stories from Aboriginal and Indigenous communities in rural Alberta and rural Saskatchewan to, South Asian communities in Scarborough to the executive towers of Bay Street. So this affects us on so many levels. Any kind of gender-based violence, whether it's child marriage, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's workplace harassment, whether it's other forms of sexism and gender-based violence that we face as women. This is our reality. This is the world we live in. It happens to all of us on some level or another, where we're made to feel as women that we need to hide bits and pieces of ourselves, or downplay ourselves, or be this much, or be a little bit too much of this or a little bit too less of that, in order to be accepted by society, in order to be respected. And it's so ironic to me that, especially in honor-based communities where a woman is supposed to hold the honor of everybody in our own hand, but she's never honored for who she is herself. And this isn't the world that we want to live in. So I have really taken this up as my mission. And that's why I do the work that I do, whether it's writing the book, whether it's speaking around the world on these topics, tirelessly advocating. And I'm also starting a nonprofit organization. I've started it, and we're in the process of getting it off the ground, which is a mentorship program for abuse survivors. So when a woman leaves a marriage or an abusive relationship, you know, she's made that courageous decision to leave. But then comes the really hard part of building a life from scratch. Sometimes when all the odds are against you, you don't have support from your family or your community, or you know, you have so many life skills that you're lacking. It often feels very intimidating and very, very like you feel lost and scared. I remember when I left, there were so many moments when I thought I should just go back because everybody told me to, but then there were people who held my hand in those dark moments and said, no, you're not alone, you can do it, we're here with you. And on average, a woman goes back 7 times to her abusers before she finally leaves. So what I'm starting this initiative, it's a nonprofit organization called Brave Beginnings, and the website is bravebeginnings.ca. You can check it out. And it's a volunteer run program, and any one of you, if you're interested, can sign up to be a mentor to a survivor who's made that first move and she's taken that first step. And now, you know, I call it like she's planted the seeds of her new life, and she needs someone to help water it and help grow it and grow that tree and that plant. So feel free to check it out. And if you're interested in getting involved as a mentor or as a volunteer, please do write to me. I'd love to chat and share more. And you know, what in the end, before we go into the Q&A part, because I'm really excited about it, I would just say one thing. The smallest actions on our part can have the most life-changing impact on someone else. And there's a reason I chose that scene to read, the one at Tim Hortons, because that person, he was an absolute stranger. And, you know, and at that time I used to be actually scared of people. But the fact that he saw me, the fact that he had this little bit of kindness for me when he bought a donut for my daughter, like, maybe to him it was nothing. He probably doesn't even remember me, but he made a life-changing impact on me because I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt valued. I felt worthy of even the tiniest bit of connection. And that is life-changing to somebody who is stuck in that situation. And I can guarantee you right now that if it's not you, then there is absolutely a woman in your neighborhood, your community, your workplace, your network, your family, your friends, your school. There are women around you who are struggling, who are silently suffering because we're not speaking up, because of the shame and stigma that is associated with speaking up and walking away. In all different communities, violence against women is universal. Yes, there are cultural intersectionalities and higher levels of shame and stigma in certain communities for sure, but women from all backgrounds can be affected. There's no correlation between race, culture, faith, even socioeconomic status when it comes to violence against women. Certainly the barriers are higher, barriers to leaving are much higher in certain communities, especially honor-based communities like where I came from, but that doesn't mean that, you know, abuse doesn't affect all of us in some way, shape, or form. So I can absolutely guarantee that there are women right now in your networks who need you to reach out and extend a helping hand and just say, hey, are you okay? We can talk about it. Even just asking someone for a coffee, even just, you know, reaching out and offering a few kind words. You never know how far that could go. Because the biggest thing that abuse does is it makes a woman feel unseen. It makes a woman feel unheard, like she doesn't matter. I spent years and years of my life feeling that I didn't matter, my needs didn't matter, my feelings didn't matter. All I was a prop to somebody else, whether it was my dad and then it was my husband and my in-laws. I didn't have any identity or any worthiness of my own. And I was told that on a daily basis. So little moments like that, when someone shows you kindness, can go a long way because it makes you feel seen. And that man at Tim Hortons did that for me because I felt somebody actually saw me. Somebody actually cared enough to ask me if I was okay or if I needed help. Somebody actually thought I was worthy of a little bit of kindness. And that means maybe I am worthy. Maybe what my husband is telling me every day is wrong. Similarly, when I started university, the people there who helped me or who were by my side showed me that yes, my life could be better and I deserved respect and kindness for who I was. And that's how I learned. So today, when I'm here sitting in front of all of you and I look back at my journey and think, what was that game changer in my life? It was certainly those people who showed me kindness, who gave me respect, who treated me with admiration, because that taught me to respect myself. That taught me that life is better and that I'm worthy of more. And today, that has helped me develop a sense of self-love that is so strong that I don't accept anything less than that from others. I've been able to develop healthy boundaries with my family and with other people who've tried to pull me down. I've been able to set a good example for my daughters and be a more empathetic parent and the role model that they deserve to have. And it's all a journey. We're never quite perfect, but we're on that journey together. And that is what I would like to leave all of you with before we go into Q&A, that just reach out, just do something small, and even that small action can have a life-changing impact on someone else, because we all deserve, and our kids deserve, to live in a world where they're never made to feel that they need to hide themselves, they need to downplay themselves, or they need to accept any kind of abuse in order to be loved, accepted, and respected. Oh, thank you. So let's jump into some Q&As, and I know we have some questions that were submitted in advance too, right?
Yes, yeah. We have some advanced questions, and there's been a few comments in the chat. I'm just going to go through the chat first, and then I'll go through some of the advanced questions. And then if anyone wants to use the thumbs up or put their hand up in the chat, I can unmute you as well. So just a comment about when you talked about your story in Tim Hortons. The person said, I can relate, money itself does not matter, but not having it and the doors to opportunity it closes, it does matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone else asked, how were you able to join UTM with the level of surveillance you were under and the lack of finances?
So what I did was I was so I hadn't even finished high school when I got married. So I was in grade 12. And at that time in Canada, we needed grade 13. This was back in 2000 when I arrived here. So I had to find a way to finish my high school courses through distance learning. So I was allowed to study as long as I was studying at home. So it took me 5 years to finish my high school courses through Independent Learning Center. Then I applied to university, I got in, but I couldn't get OSAP because OSAP looks at household income and his income was above the threshold. And also because he didn't give me any money. So I started to then work as a babysitter at home because I wasn't allowed to go out and get a job. And all my money would be taken away from me, but I would still stash a little bit on the side every month, $50, $100, $200. And it took me another 2 or 3 years to save money for my first year tuition fee as a part-time student. So eventually I started university, and I was given, I used my earning ability. Like, that's why I say money is important, is because I use that as leverage. I said to my husband that if you don't allow me to go to university, I'm going to stop the daycare. And they were already used to the additional income coming in. So I used that as leverage, and I was very reluctantly given permission to take one course. Like, I took Economics 100 Monday night, 7 to 9. I still remember, and I was given permission to take one course and not talk to anyone, don't make any friends, don't raise your hand in class, don't talk to your professors. And when I first started, I actually thought there are spies on campus that are watching me and who are going to report back to my husband. So I would just be on my absolute best behavior. I wouldn't talk to anyone, wouldn't make any friends. I would not raise my hand in class. But then slowly I started to do that, and I started to realize that, You know, this is my time. When I'm at school, I can be who I really wanted to be and who I was. And for the first time in my life, I was being respected and accepted and admired for the very things that I was being ridiculed at home for, my ambitions and my goals and my intelligence. And I would, you know, raise my hand, or I would answer a question, and I would get straight A's on exams and tests, and people would want to study with me. And it was eye-opening, because it was eye-opening for me as to towards myself, like what I deserved. And I eventually stumbled upon the Health and Counseling Center one day as I was walking on campus. There was a sign which had a bunch of questions on it. Do you feel intimidated? Do you feel like you've lost your voice? Like you can't go on, like you can't make friends? And I answered yes, yes, yes to all of them. And then it said, come in and make an appointment. We're here to talk. And that's when I started going to counseling and learning what was happening to me was not my fault. It was abuse. I deserved better. I had rights. I had options. And I started fighting back at home, which escalated the abuse. And eventually I was in my second year of undergrad when I left. And by that time, I'd gotten enough knowledge to know that if I separated, I would be able to get OSAP, that there were options, housing options on campus that I could avail, et cetera, et cetera. And that's when I made that decision. But I was under a lot of surveillance, but I just maneuvered things along the way in those 10 years to be able to have some leverage. And I knew at that time that I just need to start. And once I start, I'll keep going. So I started with one course and it just sort of went from there.
Okay. A few comments. Someone commented, I can say the reason for your hardship is bringing strength to others, empowering others, becoming an agent of change. I see the reason. I hope you can in time to come, which you did mention that as well.
Absolutely. I do believe that. And I do believe that, you know, whenever we go through negative experiences, we have the power to turn them into a positive force. And I feel very privileged and very honored to be able to do this work. You know, my biggest awards are the people that write to me. I had a man from Pakistan, a father from the same city I was born in, from Karachi, write to me and say, I have a 17-year-old daughter whose wedding is fixed for next month, and I've decided to cancel the wedding and send her to school after reading your story. You know, just a few months ago, I had 12 or 13-year-old girls from a tiny village in India, and they had read my book in their little school library, and they wrote to me a handwritten letter, which their teacher then scanned and emailed to me. And then I sent them videos, and then they sent me videos back, and it was just beautiful. And some of the words that they said were, after reading your book, we have realized that we're not going to let anything stand in our way, and we're going to follow our path and pursue our dreams. It was just, I think I was in tears for days, because I was just like, this is why I do what I do, and this is why I'll never stop. And there's just dozens of messages like these every single day on social media. And I just know, I just feel very privileged to be able to touch lives across the world and do this work, because hopefully one day this work won't be needed, but right now it is. And if I can use my negative experiences to positively impact others, that's an honor. That's a deep honor and a deep privilege that I live for.
Next comment, you're courageous and inspirational to other women in the same situation. Great having you in the past as a director at WMRCC of Durham.
Esther, hi Esther, so good to see you.
Oh, she's waving at you.
Yeah, so Esther and I go way back, and I was a director for her organization, and then I was also a keynote speaker at their gala, and she's one of my absolute favorite people, also another force in this fight, and she's just absolutely phenomenal. So great to see you, Esther. Thanks for joining.
Lots of thank yous here. I'll try to get to some of the questions. With so many years of abuse and trauma and the possible baggage that can come with it, how do you take care of yourself now, your mental health and self-care?
Oh, that's such a great question. Thank you so much for asking that. And yes, people think you just move on from trauma. Like, people say, oh, get over it. It's been so long, et cetera, et cetera. But you never really move on from trauma. You move on with it. And going through it requires skills, and I've certainly gained a lot of skills. I read a lot. I think of different ways of keeping myself positive and healthy. But then I also am very kind to myself, and I do have those moments when I feel affected by the trauma. So it comes back unexpectedly, like during the pandemic, especially, because we're all isolated, we're all like in our homes. I just started to have flashbacks of my marriage. I started to feel like I'm, like agitated, and like this feeling of like living in fear in my own home. And I was like, what is going on? Like, why am I thinking about these things that happened 20 years ago? And I spoke to my therapist, and he said, Samra, when was the last time you were isolated? You were told you can't go out of the house and you cannot make any friends. And I was like, oh my God, it was in my marriage. So sometimes it hits you unexpectedly. And in moments like, one day I came across my passport, my Pakistani passport, the very first one that I had when I got married. And my age was 17, my marital status was married, my occupation was housewife, and there was this picture of me in that passport that was taken when I was 16 years old, and I literally looked like a kid. I looked like my daughter, my younger daughter. And I don't know, something just clicked in me, and I speak about my story every day, and just something affected me so deeply looking at that I just burst into tears. And I was like, just filled with so much, not pity, and I wasn't feeling sorry for myself, but I was just feeling sad, this deep sense of loss, that I will never ever know what it's like to have a healthy childhood. Like that girl in that picture, yes, it was me, but it was almost like me looking at some other girl's picture, and I just felt so sad for her that she'll never know what it's like to go to concerts with friends, or the biggest worry being the next exam or the next test, or having, falling in love, or finding choosing if or who or when to get married, and if or when to have children. Like all those things that were taken away from me should never ever be taken away from any child, any girl. And yes, it is hard in those moments. And what I have learned is that, instead of beating myself up and saying, oh, come on, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I feeling this way? It's been 20 years now, I'll get over it. I'll give myself a hug, and I say, you know what? This is perfectly normal to feel this way. And I'm going to take it easy today, and I'm going to take care of myself. And during the pandemic, I did that. I took care of myself. I did some solo road trips. I actually went last week away to Algonquin for 5 days, which was beautiful. I have some amazing, amazing friends who I can lean on, and I can reach out to and say, hey, I'm having a tough day. Can we talk? Or they would just say, okay, come over, we'll order some takeout and watch Bollywood movies or something, so it is, these are the people who I lean on, and I definitely talk about it very openly with my daughters, because they're struggling through trauma too. My older daughter was almost 10 when I left the marriage, and she grew up watching a lot of it at home. So she herself developed a lot of trauma and a lot of mental health issues that she struggled with during her mid-teens. And there was a period of time when she was 15, 16, which was very difficult for our family. And in fact, that's what my next book is about, where she and I are co-writing my next book about that journey of healing from mental health as a family. But it is really imperative to develop the skills to educate ourselves, to not blame ourselves for feeling sad. Like we have this weird pressure in society, like that somehow negative emotions are bad, but negative emotions are part of our human experience. It's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel upset, it's okay to feel angry, it's okay to feel traumatized, it's okay to feel all what we're feeling. Our feelings are always valid. Doesn't mean they necessarily have to translate into action, but our feelings are what they are, and we need to accept our feelings and take care of ourselves in the process. So if I am feeling afraid one day of something, then yeah, acknowledge that fear, like journal it, write about it. Like I often I do a lot of writing. So I write about things that I'm feeling. I go out for walks. I lean on my friends. I talk to my children. They talk to me when they're feeling certain things. And instead of saying, oh, come on, get over it. It's been ages. Why are you feeling this way now? I'm always like, yeah, you know what? It's totally okay. Let's talk about it. Let me sit here with you and hold your hand. And I'll just share one quick story. During the time when my daughter was struggling, we were in a joint therapy program in Mississauga, where we were learning skills of emotional regulation. We were learning skills about interpersonal skills, et cetera, et cetera. And she was really struggling during those years. And when she first started displaying signs of distress, I would say things like, oh, come on, I was married when I was your age. Like, there are other kids in the world who are dying of hunger. And and she one day said to me, Mom, just because you had different problems and others have different problems doesn't mean that my problems are not valid. And it was like a big wake-up call statement for me. And I was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. What you're experiencing is absolutely valid, and it's your experience, and I have no right to invalidate it. And as we went through this program together, there was one time when we were in a group, in the group portion of the program. So there was myself and her, and there were other parents and their youth who were also struggling. So we were all going through this weekly group thing. So we were in group therapy one day, and she had a panic attack, and she got up and she went out, and she literally went and sat in the middle of the street. And I went out with her, and I could see she was in distress. And my initial thought was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. She's sitting in the middle of the street. What if a car comes, et cetera, et cetera. But then I just paused, and I thought, okay, what does she need from me right now? So I went up to her, and I sat down with her in the middle of the street, and I held her hand, and I said, is it okay if I sit here with you? We can sit here for as long as you want. We don't have to get back up. I just don't want to leave you by yourself. And she looks at me and she's like, you're going to sit here with me in your short dress and your 4-inch heels. I said, yes, I will, because I love you. And I just want to sit here and hold your hand. Is that okay? She said, yes, that's fine. And we sat there for literally maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and she burst into tears. She got back up. She's like, Mom, thanks for not leaving me. Let's go back inside. We went back inside, and we finished the rest of the session with our hands held under the table. And that is what empathy is. Empathy is not about solving someone's problems. It's not about fixing things. It's about holding space. It's about making someone feel safe in their experience and in their feelings. And it starts with us. We have to do that for ourselves too. Just like I did that for my daughter, I got to do that for me as well. So when I am feeling distressed, when I am feeling traumatized, when I'm having these emotions come up or trauma come up, I have to make sure that I hold my hand too and create that safe space for myself, that it's okay to feel this way and go through that. And, you know, yes, you will absolutely come out of it. Sometimes it lasts a day, sometimes it lasts an hour, or sometimes it lasts a week. Like during this pandemic, it was difficult. It was very frequent. And yes, there was one time, like 1 minute I'd be feeling like in the morning, I'd be like dancing around with my kids. And then in the evening, I'd be like, oh God, I don't know. I'm just feeling a lot of anxiety, and that's okay. You know, but the key is to have the skills to pull through it, to realize what's going on, and to give yourself what you need at that time to take care of you. Because if you're not okay, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. So put yourself first, be kind to yourself, be empathetic towards yourself, and have the skills in your toolkit to be able to go through those weak moments and come out on the other side stronger and more resilient and happier. Because life is beautiful. And yes, bad things happen to all of us, but life itself is beautiful. And there will be weak moments. Just push through that and realize that life is so worth living.
Thank you, Samra. Okay, in this book you share that when you left, you didn't have the full support of your family. How is your relationship with them now? My mother was also a victim of abuse, and when she finally left, we found, found that the support was not unanimous. So interested to hear how your relationship is now.
Yeah, so my relationship with my family is very complicated. That's the best word, I think. I consider my family to be my daughters and my very close friends. So I have, with my mom, it's very superficial. Like, she did support me from a moral standpoint, but she couldn't really support me from a financial way. And more, the relationship has broken down more after, though. Like, the life choices that I make today, and what she doesn't agree with, and the judgment that comes my way, that is really, like when I was talking earlier about building boundaries with people that you even care about and love. And sometimes the backlash and the hurt comes from people that you love and you care about. And you have to then figure out, like, where does that boundary lie? That, yes, I want to have a relationship with my mom, but at the same time, I don't want to have her make me feel bad about myself and about my life choices and about who I am today. So there were times when I didn't talk to her at all. Then I started talking to her, and then finally we've come to a place where it seems to work, where I've said to her that, you know what, Mom, these topics are off limits. You're not going to tell me how to parent. You're not going to tell me about faith. You're not going to talk to me about these things, because these are very personal choices. We can talk about, other things. I'm happy to support you. I want to have a relationship with you, but I'm not going to have conversations where I'm going to be left feeling invalidated and devalued for who I am as a person. So that is very important. And I've done that with other members of my family too, whether it's my sisters, whether it's my cousins and others. I mean, a lot of my extended family, I'm not even in touch with. I've completely cut them off, because I'm the first woman in my entire extended family to ever get a divorce. I come from a very conservative Pakistani family where divorce is so taboo. Single motherhood is a bad word. So I've done something very shameful, according to a lot of them. And while, yes, I want to change those narratives, but I also realize that, there will be cases and there will be people that I will not be able to create any kind of change for. In fact, it will only cause pain and distress to myself. So I've had to draw some boundaries with a lot of people, and also cut off some people. And initially, I did used to feel a little bit guilty, or I don't know. I mean, just, like, am I doing the right thing or not? But as I've gone through life, I realize that's absolutely imperative, because you have to love yourself enough to not allow that in your life, and not allow people in your life that will pull you down or make you feel bad about who you are. And when you do that, that's when you're able to show up better for other people too.
Okay. We had some questions that were submitted when people were registering, so I'm going to go through a few of those. Thanks, Samra, for being beautiful inspiration. Was it difficult to come out with your story? Did you seek to find a balance between authenticity and discretion, or did you just go for complete, bold honesty?
That is such an amazing question. So yes, it was difficult. I think the difficult part for me, the most difficult part for me was, like, what will people say, the backlash. I mean, this was, again, the first time I shared my story was 7 years ago, right? So the book was a long time in the making, but that was in a blog. And certainly that time I did feel that. But, it was actually my daughter who motivated me to first share my story. She said to me, Mom, if every woman feels it's too shameful and too traumatic and we should not talk about it, then how will this change? I think you should talk about it. I think you should say something. I think you should break the silence. So that's when I first started sharing my story. So every time I've been having those moments of self-doubt, I just think, what's the example I want to set for my daughters, and I'm doing this for them. And then by extension, all other daughters in the world and other girls in the world. So it was difficult, yes. But now I've gone through that all over these years. I've sort of learned to use that as fuel to my fire. So whenever I do get backlash or any kinds of negativity, I'm like, yeah, bring it on. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if you're not ruffling a few feathers, you're not really causing a lot of change. So I'm all right with that. Totally okay with that. As far as the balance between authenticity and discretion, I think for sure, like, you always have to have boundaries. Yes, I've bared my soul in the book, but then there's a lot of stuff that I haven't shared. And I may not share ever because of certain reasons, you know, and we all have our reasons. So maybe it's to protect the privacy of my mom, or maybe it's to protect the privacy of my daughter. So, or even just for my own self, like, you know, this is how much I'm willing to share. And this is some stuff that, you know, is I'm still healing from, or I'm not at the place right now to be able to share all of this. So, and that's okay. You have to realize where those boundaries lie. And certainly as I was writing the book, I had to very consciously think about it. There were certain experiences that my publisher and I were like, I'm not sure if we should talk about this or not. Like, there were a couple of scenes, for example, in the book where my father was shown as being extremely violent, which were true stories. But in the end, I felt like I don't have my mom's permission to share these. And these are very intimate details about her marriage. So I held them back. But then I did talk to her later on after that, and she's okay with me. So sharing about or talking about these, I'm talking about it today, or I have actually in the screenwriting process for the TV series adaptation of the book, we are bringing some of those things out a little bit more. Similarly, you know, my daughter is okay now for me to talk about her mental health struggles, but she wasn't at the time I was writing the book. So, and even for me, you know, there were some issues that I wasn't willing to talk about at that time, and now I am. So it will keep evolving. You need to check in with yourself. But the other part is like, whatever I did share and whatever I did choose to share, it was like the bulk of it it is rooted in deep vulnerability and deep authenticity. In fact, the first thing that I had a list of aims that I wanted to achieve with the book. The first thing was I didn't want anyone to read this as a superwoman story. I wanted people to read this and say, this is a woman's story. I can see myself in it in some way, shape, or form, even if it's a whole different experience that you've been through. But the journey of finding yourself, loving yourself, being who you are, being free in who you are is very similar, and we're all on that journey, right? So I wanted to be deeply vulnerable. I wanted to, you know, a lot of times when I would do TED Talks and little interviews and things, women would write to me, oh, you can do it because you're a superwoman and you were so smart and you were so intelligent and look at you, you're so strong, etc. And I would say to them, do not compare my end to your beginning. Because when I was in that situation, I had the same fears, the same doubts, the same setbacks. I left and went back 6 times before I was finally able to leave. So I was facing the same things, and I wanted to lay my soul bare and talk about all those fears. And, you know, when readers tell me that, oh my God, when I was reading this book, I was so angry with you. Why did you keep going back? Or I was so frustrated. Or I was just like, oh my God, not again. Like, you know, or I just felt like really sorry. And I was just sad. And I was like, that's exactly the emotions that I wanted to invoke in the readers, because that's how I felt too. I felt frustrated with myself, angry with myself, or weak, or judging myself, etc. So I wanted women to read this and realize that, you know, they're not alone, and leaving is a process. So that I wanted to answer that question, why women stay. And then also I wanted to write with a lot of honesty about my ex-husband, because people often paint abusers with this, oh, this is a villainous monster, kind of a brushstroke. But in essence, really, you know, a lot of abusers are people who have very flawed value systems, who are validated by their surroundings, who grew up this way and haven't been able to resolve their own issues, who are facing a lot of deep pain and insecurities in themselves, who have unhealed trauma that they're struggling with. So we need to understand the other side of the picture too, right? And we need to address those things in our school systems, in our healing mechanisms, in our counseling centers, and have more reform rather than just punishment built into the process. So yes, I definitely wanted to be extremely honest, extremely vulnerable, but also know where my boundaries lay, and how much I wanted to share. So, but I've shared pretty much like a lot, all of my life story. I haven't held back much. You know, I truly believe in what you said, complete bold honesty. So yes, it is complete bold honesty.
what would have been helpful in terms of support from the community in your quest for freedom?
You know, I think the support that I did get was absolutely phenomenal, and that was from the U of T community. I'm a big believer in education, and I always tell women that your education is something no one can take away from you. And I was a student at UTM. That's where I got most of my support, and that's why I continue to volunteer with U of T, and I always will in some form, in some capacity. Um, but however, prior to that, because as I said, I tried leaving so many times and I was either sent back or I went back at that time. And I think even today, you know, when I think of like what is needed in the community, we need to build inroads into communities and into neighborhoods and into um, into you know into communities where there are a lot of diverse backgrounds. So like I said before, you know, violence against women is universal. It happens across the board. It happens to women from all across the world, all backgrounds, all socioeconomic statuses, etc. But the experience of it, the barriers to leaving are much more elevated in communities where there are women of color, women from different faiths and backgrounds, with women that are brought into this country as refugees or immigrants or child brides, for example, like myself, because we don't even know, like I didn't even know for 10 years about my rights. I thought, and I was made to believe by my husband and his family, my ex-husband and his family, that if I left, I would be deported because he sponsored me to the country. And that was absolutely false, but I had no way of knowing better. So a lot of these women, they don't even know what their basic rights are. And they are never seen. They're not allowed to go out of the house. Like I wasn't even allowed to go into my backyard. So I had no other human contact apart from just being in that basement with my and in that house with my ex-husband and my in-laws and my daughters. So it's imperative to make inroads into those communities. So you can have a fancy shelter with all the bells and whistles, but if the women that need it don't even know about it, what's the point, right? So one of the low-hanging fruit is, even though these women are not allowed to go anywhere outside, one place they are often allowed to go is to the schools to drop their kids off, or to drop-in centers like where I was, and I was taking my daughter. So it's important to build this education into our school systems, have have teachers or other school professionals be able to identify some signs maybe with the kids, because kids often show those signs of distress when they see violence at home, and be able to have authority to be able to talk to some of these women. What's going on? Like, are you okay? And maybe they may not come forth right away, but they eventually will. Another thing that I've actually been advocating to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada about, I was in Ottawa last year giving a big speech to their entire department, that one thing also is that when women do come to this country as immigrants, refugees, or any other way, they should go through a mandatory course where they learn about what their rights are. They learn about what are early signs of abusive behavior. What is abuse in any way? I didn't even know what was happening to me was abuse until 10 years later, because we don't talk about it. It was so normalized where I came from in my family and culture. So we have to have those, and these things need to be taught to girls in their school system. What are early signs of abusive behavior? And abuse doesn't start with a slap or a kick. Abuse starts with those backhanded compliments, those, little digs at you and your self-esteem, masked under a lot of love and romance. Like, oh, why are you going out with your friends? Don't you want to spend all your time with me? I love you so much. Like, that's a way of isolating you. If a man says to you, I love you, within 5 days of meeting you without even getting to know you, that's not romantic. That's a red flag, despite what the media and the movies say, right? So we need to teach our girls and our boys about healthy relationships, about early signs of identifying abuse with yourself and with others, and about your rights as a kid, as a human being. Like, if girls know that, getting married, being forced into marriage under the age of 18, or any age actually, being forced into any marriage is wrong, and here's what you can do to get out of it, that could save so many lives. But if we're just going to keep brushing these conversations under the rug because it's politically correct to do so, or it's, you know, it's their culture, it's their religion, so we shouldn't talk about it, that is wrong. Because since when do we turn a blind eye to human rights violations in the name of cultural and religious freedom? That's absolutely wrong. It's bananas, right? And the other thing is that we need to give platform to women from diverse communities to be able to come forward and share their stories. Like I struggle to find another woman, you know, who is speaking so openly about these issues like I am. And when I do find them, I'm like, yes, let's join forces, because we need to raise our voices. We need to give those platforms, because you know, a lot of times it's really about that experience. Like I said, you know, abuse is universal, but the experience of it is different from community to community, and it's very intersectional with culture, race, religion, and all those things. So we need to bring forth that intersectionality and make inroads into communities where often these things are much more stigmatized and shamed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I had a question come in online here. So what was the most helpful thing that enabled you to heal yourself in becoming able to trust and love men again and not fear that they are manipulating you?
Oh, that is such a great question. You know what? I never really feared men. I think it came from a lot of the biggest difference though was when the most of my mentors in my entire journey have actually been men. My professors were all men, mostly anyway, because I was in economics and finance and a lot of very male dominated subject. My mentors have been men. So, you know, when I read this scene from the book where John Rothschild was the chair of the Moss Committee, he actually became my mentor. And he's the closest thing I have to a father. So he and I are super, super close. And it's actually probably the most beautiful relationship of my life, apart from the one that I have by my daughters. So mentors, professors, and a lot of my friends are guys. So I have a lot of positive male figures in my life. And that has really, really helped me. And also going and leaning into my healing, leaning into my own self-work. So the fact that I went to counseling, I proactively seeked out support, I educated myself, and I knew that, yes, I do have trauma, but here's how I'm going to heal from it. And I didn't want to end up bitter and jaded and cynical about future relationships, et cetera, et cetera. So I've worked really hard to develop that healthy perspective. And also the fact that I have a lot of positive male figures in my life, as friends, as mentors, as father figures, as brother figures, as professors, etc. That helps a lot. And even with Brave Beginnings, you know, I've got many men on my board. My co-founder is a guy. I've always known that just because, you know, with my father and my husband, I had abusers, I just knew that, instinctively always knew that that's not representative of the entire male species. So and the more that I've lived life, the more I've realized that that's true. And I don't want to you know, I don't want to turn out to be cynical of future relationships or friendships or anything like that. So that has also been a very conscious effort on my part.
Wonderful. Okay. Oh, okay. We had a private question come in.
Yeah.
Just got texted to me. Okay. Is there any books that you can recommend for recognizing abuse?
Recognizing abuse. I have, so first of all, my book, because I think my book is my story, but it's told in a way that a lot of that, you know, I've used my story as an example to bring forth a lot of what abuse looks like. And there's a couple of chapters in there that I really go into detail about the cycle of abuse, how that works, what that looks like, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of different articles and TED Talks and things available online that you can research. I read more shorter articles and things like that on these issues, because I feel like, you know, they bring things to a point, and you can actually read, like, you know, signs to recognize early or like abusive behavior, because non-physical abuse is very, very hard to recognize, and physical abuse is just the tip of the iceberg. And sometimes it never even happens. Sometimes it takes years to happen, and sometimes it never does. In my case, it was, I think, 8 or 10 years before he first actually hit me. And abuse, I often describe it as this frog analogy. If somebody comes and slaps you, it's like putting a frog in hot water. The frog will jump out and run away, right? Someone coming and slap you, and you're going to report that person, and you're going to send them, you know, file charges or something like that. But when a frog is put into cold water and the heat is turned up ever so slightly, and the frog's body temperature will keep adjusting to the heating water, the frog will eventually boil to death without even realizing it. And that is what emotional abuse and psychological abuse looks like. It's very insidious. It starts with a lot of love and romance. It starts with a lot of trust building. And there's little things that are making you feel bad about yourself, that are making you feel like, I don't know what it is. It just doesn't feel right. Comments on your clothing, comments on your dreams, and belittling who you are, etc., making you feel bad about yourself. So listen to your gut. Your gut is your best compass in those situations, and trust yourself if you're not feeling good around this person. In fact, one quick resource I'd like to point out as well that I've created is, during the pandemic, I was doing a lot of webinars and things to raise awareness on the domestic violence that's rising during COVID-19. And that's because of isolation is an abuser's best friend. And right now during the pandemic, isolation is pretty much, you know, being handed to an abuser inadvertently on a silver platter. So it's escalating a lot. So in fact, some parts of the country have reported a 400% increase in the number of calls that are being put through to helplines and domestic violence shelters. So I created a series of videos, and they're actually on my YouTube channel, and one of them I've gone very deep into the early signs of emotional abuse, of psychological abuse, of financial abuse, and how the cycle of abuse works, etc. So look into that. There's a really good resource called the Power Wheel, and if you just Google it, the Power Wheel of abuse, you'll be able to find that. And there's a lot of articles really explaining what that looks like and all the different behaviors that contribute to it. So read that. I will try to look up some books, and maybe if you can write to me, maybe Regina, if you can tell whoever this person is, if they can write to me, send me an email, samra@samrazafar.com. I would send them some resources and some links of things to read that I have. My website actually has a resource page as well, where there are some things. Canadian Women's Foundation is a great one as well. If you go there are a lot of different resources. Also, Western University has a Center for Research for Violence Against Women and Children, and that's a very good resource as well. So there's a lot of stuff out there that you can read and educate yourself on, and read as much as you can, because knowledge is power, and the more knowledge you get, the more power you will have in order to be able to say no to abuse and leave.
Excellent. So just to share, everyone that we've had participating today, we will be sharing this video on our YouTube channel next week, and we'll be sharing a bunch of the resources that Samra shared today. And we'll also write Samra separately with the questions that we weren't able to answer today, because there was an abundance. And we'll make sure to somehow share out that message to everyone that did ask questions next week. So I'm going to reintroduce Sherry here, and I'll let you two talk.
Awesome. Welcome back, Sherry.
There we go. Okay, I'm unmuted. That was great, Samra. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's a brave thing to do, and to continue to be that shining light for other women who may not even know, like you said, like the frog, right? just turning up the heat just a little bit more every time, they may not even realize the situation that they're in.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for being brave enough to speak out and share that story. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sherry.
And it was so lovely to see your beautiful face again. I can hardly wait to see you in.
I know. I can't wait
to give you a hug.
hug.
I think that's the one thing I miss the most about this COVID thing is I really want to hug people and I can't.
You and I had lunch just before it all.
I know. Who knew, right?
Who knew? Like, and
Who knew our world would change.
You're like, yeah, let's do this again next month. And then they're like, oh my God.
No, doing that. I don't even know when we'll be able to do it again, but it's just lovely to see you again. And thank you so much. I'm sending you so much love. And please take care of yourself. And we'll get together after this is all done.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you very much, Samra. If everybody could just stick around just for a little bit. I just want to go over a few of our future events that we're going to have here at WXN. We have a lot going on. The first thing on the agenda here is the top 100. We extended the nominations again to August the 3rd, just due to an outcry from so many organizations and people who just needed more time because of the pandemic. So this is our final deadline, August the 3rd. So if you know a wonderful woman, a powerful woman in your life, like Samra, please, I would encourage you to put forward her nomination. Again, our membership is at a special price because of the pandemic. We want everybody to have an opportunity to be part of WXN at a reasonable investment. So you can, for as little as $8.25 a month, or you can have a one-time payment of $99 for the year. We really do have a great community, and you can meet with a lot of our top 100 award winners. We have other amazing women who are have their own organizations, and you can learn so much from each other. So please join us. Our upcoming virtual events, we have the Summer Sizzle with WXN. It's virtual patio cocktail events in July and August. Please join us. And coming up too, we have Words of Wisdom. It's launching our Wisdom Mentoring Program, which starts next year in 2021, but applications for that will launch in September. We're going to be having some really engaging conversations with our last year's mentors and mentees, so please join me as we speak to them. And then we're starting something really interesting in the fall with our WXN ambassadors, Monday Mojo with WXN. So please stay tuned for that. That's going to be a lot of fun and very inspiring. And then, of course, we finish up our Unite and Rise webinar series, part 3 and 4, in the fall, in October and November. So please stay tuned for that as well. And we continue our virtual book club events this year as well. Coming up in September, we have Claire Becton, Own It, Your Success, Your Future, and Your Life. Claire is another top 100 award winner. In October, we have Patricia Geigich, and in November, we bring back Tanya and Joanna to discuss their book, Undermined. And that's it. Thank you very much. Again, Samra, thank you. Love you. And we'll talk later. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Bye-bye.